Planning and Stakeholders Relations Committee to order. First item is the roll call. Committee members, can you identify yourself if you're on?
Allie Doyle.
Nick
Allie.
Piscina.
Ann O'Gork.
Is Stephanie on? Okay, any other board members like to identify themselves, please?
Jeff Letwin.
Michelle Smianik.
Lori Mizgorski.
Stephanie Terman.
Good morning,
Jen
Stephanie.
Litak.
Okay, good. Thank you, guys. Second item is the approval of the March 16th meeting minutes. Any corrections to the minutes? Okay. Seeing no corrections, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Amy, you're up. Authorization to amend the Pittsburgh Regional Transit Service Standards. Amy?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
My name is Amy Silverman. I'm the Director of Planning and Service Development here at PRT. This morning, I'm going to give a brief presentation on some changes that we have to our transit service standards before recommending a resolution to the board for their adoption of the updates. So rolling right into it, what the transit service standards are, those in the room, you have this in your packet as Exhibit A, is a document that outlines our goals and our baselines for all of our services that we provide. So all bus, light rail, and incline modes are included, and our buses are further categorized into some different categories of types. These standards are used to evaluate how all of our services are performing every year in a variety of metrics. And then every January, we push out and publish an annual service report that shows everybody how all of those services are doing. This document that includes the standards needs to be updated every 2 to 3 years by the board. This allows us to keep pace with the latest trends in transit service planning and latest trends in our environment, which this time around included a pandemic. So the last time that these standards were comprehensively updated was in 2019. We did have a minor update early in 2020, but that was not actually focused on the pandemic. That was focused on a weekend service push that we were prioritizing at the time. So these updates to this transit service standards are going to look a little bit more, there's a little bit more to them than there usually is, with just a slight edit and update, because our world of ridership and transit service planning has changed pretty significantly since 2019. Next slide, please. So what is in the transit service standards are 2 different categories of things. The first category on the left is about service design. How do we design a transit route, regardless of mode or type? And so the very basics of transit route planning are that routes need to be efficient and serve as many people as possible. And so there are a whole bunch of metrics that go into that. We want to make sure our services are clear, consistent, straightforward, simple for people to understand, serve main business districts, serve main streets, serve as many people as possible, turn as few times as possible so that we can carry people further in a less amount of time. And then there are also service standards for levels of service. And this would be how frequently does a transit route come? How early or late in the day does it come? How many people are allowed to be on board before we have to add more service? Or how few people can be on board before we start to take away trips, so that we are balancing the efficiency of all of our routes. So the things in yellow on this slide are the things that we've proposed updates to this round of transit service standards. So those include on-time performance, which has a service design principle of having adequate running time. That means the amount of time it takes a vehicle to go from point to point. And that also includes how frequent the services are. how many people are allowed to be on a transit vehicle before we add or remove service. In the add instance, that would be crowding. So if we have too many people on a vehicle, we want to add more trips to make sure we're providing good service to those people and not passing anybody up. And then productivity is the other side of that, how few people can be on a vehicle before we start to remove trips to make sure that we are efficiently using our vehicles to carry as many people as possible. Oh, and then there was an animation I forgot on there. So we've added a new standard this time, which I'll talk about in a future slide, but we have a new standard for this version, which is our out of service standard. Next slide, please. So a few of these updates are very specific to a post-pandemic world, and some of these updates do not have anything to do with the pandemic, but are just continual updates and improvements that we can make to these standards. The ones on this page are focused on pandemic changes that we've had. So these are changes in frequency and changes in loading. So for frequency, we have changed our rapid service guideline from having to run at least every 10 minutes to having to run at least every 15 minutes. An important point about all of these standards is they set baselines. It doesn't mean that we always have to, we can't go above and beyond any of these things. These are sort of like the floor or the basement of the very base level of service we have to provide. So rapid services are our light rail and our busways and any future BRTs. So making sure those are operating every 15 minutes. And then crowding, we're able to change the standard in a post-pandemic world for the better. This means we don't have quite the peaks or quite the crush lows, as we refer to them as, that we used to in 2019. We used to have, for example, as many as 150 people, maybe even 200 people on a light rail vehicle before we considered that a crush load. We no longer have to use that baseline as our level of service. We can be a little bit more friendly to people and giving them space now because those rush hours are not quite as peaky or quite as crowded as they used to be. So we are proposing a reduction in our baselines for when we consider a route to be overcrowded and need to add more trips. And then we also have a few routes that we have changed the category of what type of bus route they are categorized as. I will tell you on the next slide what that means and what it means for those routes, but we are proposing to change 2 routes from previously being categorized as a commuter route to now being a local route. That's the 28X and P78. And then 6 routes changing from a local bus route to a coverage bus route. That's the 2, the 15, the 27, the 44, the 55, and the 58. So let's go to the next slide so I can tell you what that means. We have 4 different types of transit routes in addition to our different modes of transit. So our modes of transit are light rail, bus, incline, and paratransit. And then we have 4 types of routes that a bus can be. A bus can be a rapid, which you don't see on this page. That's our busways or future BRT routes. And then we also have local, coverage, and commuter bus routes. Those have different standards within this document for different metrics. So if a route changes from, say, a local bus route to a coverage bus route, what that generally means for us is that fewer people are riding it. And so it may not need to come as often as it used to when more people were riding it. But it also means we don't have to meet a certain amount of efficiency every hour to provide that service. So for example, on a local bus route, we strive to maintain at least 25 passengers per hour of service we provide, whereas on a coverage route, we are striving only to carry 15 passengers per hour. And then other things like on-time performance or crowding or span of service don't really have any differences between route types. The exception of that is commuter routes. Commuter routes really only have to run for about an hour or so at rush hour every day as a very, very, very most basic baseline. Most of our commuter routes operate with a much broader span of service than that. But at the very most basic, a route needs to operate for that one peak hour in the morning and that one peak hour in the evening with 3 trips. Next slide, please. So a couple more updates for pandemic, the post-pandemic world we're in now. For productivity, this is how many passengers per hour we need to carry. We have decreased most of our productivity standards in this update of the transit service standards. That does reflect the current realities that we are experiencing with ridership. And so for light rail, we have decreased our passengers per hour of service by about half at all times of day and days of week. For our BRT and rapid bus services, we have decreased about 5 to 10 passengers per hour at different times and days of the week. And then for our commuter, local, and coverage bus routes, we have notched those down 5 passengers per hour at all times. The exception is our baseline in 2019 was 15 passengers per hour. We've not lowered that baseline. So we are still mass transit. We still need to be carrying lots of people. So we've not lowered that baseline below 15 passengers per hour. I will note, as you know, seeing some of these productivity numbers being decreased can seem less efficient. What we are striving to do with these standards is prioritize what we focus on. So we always want to have goals that are achievable, but also rigorous. If we can't ever meet them, it doesn't really help us prioritize what's most important to be focusing on for efficiency. And if we always are meeting them, then we probably aren't striving for a whole lot. So we're trying to meet that middle ground of making sure we continue to push to do better and focus our energy on where we can do better, where it's needed the most, while also making sure that we are continuing to push. Next slide. All right, I noted we have a new standard this time. So this is a standard we've actually been tracking forever, or probably forever, but have never had to track publicly because it hasn't really been an issue in the recent past. And that is our out of service. That's the percentage of time that a scheduled transit trip is not able to be operated due to lack of perhaps a bus operator to drive the vehicle or a train operator to drive the vehicle, perhaps due to a vehicle not being available, maybe it's broken down or something has happened in the middle of its route or some other instance like that. So, of course, about a year ago, we started experiencing some higher levels of out of service. So since then, we've been tracking these numbers very closely internally and thought this was the appropriate time to make sure we're adding them to this public-facing document so that we can be accountable to the public and make sure we're presenting on that annually as well. So pre-pandemic, our out of service always averaged well below 1%. Our goal that we have set in this round of the transit service standards is 1.5% or less. And there's a little chart here on the slide noting sort of what it's been for the last 8 to 10 months or so. We have been trending down. So that's been something that's been a key focus of the agency, I know, over the last many months. And you can see that is starting to pay off in our numbers as well. We've been below that 1.5% threshold for the last 3 months, and hopefully will continue to be. Next slide. We also have a few updates here that are simplifying things that had gotten a little bit too complicated in our previous versions of our standards. So one of those is on-time performance. We had been asked by the state in a prior version of the standards to have different on-time performance goals for different types of service, which actually overcomplicated things for us. So we're going back to simple again and are proposing a bus on-time performance goal of 75% and a light rail on-time performance goal of 87%. Before we had several different bus on-time performance goals depending on the type of bus route that a group was in. And then we also have a few routes that we are proposing be paired together as one route in sort of our definition of a bus route because they are in essence already one bus route that operates 2 variants. However, how our systems, our IT systems are set up, they're currently categorized as separate bus routes. This just allows us to, and our scheduling department to better be able to schedule these services together and to make sure that we are changing them as needed more easily than if we were just having to change one route at a time. So a little bit probably overly detailed for those of you not living in the world of scheduling and service planning, but for all intents and purposes, the 53 and 53L routes act as one sort of paired route together, the 71 and P71, the P1 and the P2, and the Y1 and Y46. So these will be turned into, sometime over the next year, we will turn these route pairs into one route that has 2 different variants, similar to how maybe the P16 or the 87 may operate today. Those routes are a single route, but they have 2 different variants on them. All right, and then finally, the service standards have outlined our process of how we make major service changes and how we evaluate major service changes. And we have proposed a significant update to this process. So in the past, we have pulled in every request that comes at us from any direction it comes from and evaluated everything that comes in and pushed out a list of those evaluations and how each evaluation compares to each other in our annual service report. This takes a lot of staff time and energy. And actually, our state auditors have noted it as something that they'd like us to focus on spending less staff time on. And the reason for that is because we don't always have a lot of ability to add new bus routes every year, for example. So we're spending a lot of time evaluating, do we put in this new bus route or this new bus route, only to maybe not have the ability to add too much more in the following year. So what we've proposed to do instead is every 3 to 5 years to have consultants come on board and help us and our staff to do a sort of higher level study, a 3 to 5 year network study. Sometimes it's called a comprehensive operational analysis that would look at all of the routes and take a more systemic look at how do we want to update this system and these services to meet how our county and how our cities are working today. So we actually will start that this year with a full transit network study that I think we've talked about here at the board before, that we received a federal grant to help us do. And then following that, every 3 to 5 years or so, we will do a sort of high level update of that and say, hey, what's on the horizon for the next 3 to 5 years? Where do we want to focus? And that'll give us a roadmap that we will then each year in our annual service report further detail. Next year, here are the pieces of that 3 to 5 year study that we want to focus on starting to implement. So rather than evaluating everything every single year, we'll evaluate everything every 3 to 5 years and then do those interim updates in between that larger scale study. This also will allow us each January to have that annual service report, detailed changes we'd like to make for the following October. And then through the end of the winter and into spring, have sort of a formal annualized public engagement for any service changes that we're proposing. If we need to do, any board level events or hearings or anything like that, those can happen in the spring. And that aligns really well with our budget season as well for getting ready to move into our fiscal year in July, so that our scheduling team can be ready to make those changes for our October schedule changes. So this will give us a nice annual pulse. Each January, we'll come out with proposals, do engagement each spring, get it into the budget each summer, and make those changes each fall. All right, and I'll pause there before I say the resolution to see if there are any questions.
Can you talk a little bit about the access to paratransit, how it fits into this? Because there's some significant changes here that are being proposed.
Yeah, absolutely. If I don't have those off the top of my head, but why don't we plan to get those to you next month? Is that all right if we come and present those?
Well, right, but they're part of the resolution.
Oh, that's true. That's fair. Yeah. I actually don't recall any significant change. I know we had like 2 word tweaks,
the
but
convenience fare, that was, isn't that was that part of it?
I didn't think we made anything other than, editing tweaks to that, but I can ask a quick question maybe after this and we can come back to it and maybe we hold on the resolution. Would that be? Okay, yeah.
Okay.
I don't
just wanted to make sure, because obviously when you mentioned modes of transportation, you also mentioned access,
Yeah.
which is something obviously so important from not just from a disability standpoint, but from a senior standpoint as well, because there's changes on keeping track of what's going on with access is important. Since I've always mentioned it as an integral part of what the services that we provide. So, okay, that works for me. So let's do it this way then. Let's try to get additional information. Do I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved. Second.
What was Mike's suggestion? I'm sorry.
Okay,
Did you?
how do you want to?
My suggestion was that the committee proceed with considering the resolution. As Mr. Haig said when he introduced it, subject to staff will follow up with additional written information between now and next week's full board meeting concerning a summary of any changes to the access portion of the transit service standards.
Does that
I'll
work?
move forward, yeah.
Okay, so then I think there was a second with who made the second?
Ally.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to move the resolution forward to the full board next week based on the vote. So all in favor of doing that, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much for the presentation, Amy. And that really concludes the committee. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Okay, the meeting stands adjourned until next month. So thank you. And I think Michelle's up next. So Michelle,
I am.
oh, yours. Sorry.
We'll give it a second, let everybody get their paperwork. All right, I'll call to order the Finance Committee meeting for April 20th, 2023, starting with a roll call of our committee members. Member Liptak, are you present? Present. Member DeLon?
Jerry can't make it today.
Oh, okay. Representative Chris Catano?
I'm here.
Any other board members, please identify yourselves.
John
Jeff
Tagg.
Jeff Letwin,
Stephanie
Lori
Turman.
Mizgorski,
Michelle Smith. Okay, thank you. All right, our first order of business is approval of minutes of the March 16, 2023 Finance Committee meeting. Do I have any revisions to the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve the minutes? So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Okay, minutes are approved. Our only agenda item today is review of the March 2023 financial statements.
Good morning, Madam Chair and other board members. So to review the March financial results, our total operating income was $650,000 below budget. And that's due to lower passenger revenues, as I'll note on a subsequent slide. We are about 12% over in passenger revenues, but we're just not quite as high as we had budgeted for this fiscal year. Passenger revenues specifically were about $950,000 below budget, and that is due to lower U-Pass, monthly pass, fare box, and also stored value sales. Our total operating income for the year is $2.2 million below budget. And that's due to lower passenger revenues and also access shared ride revenues. The passenger revenues from a fiscal year perspective are below budget, primarily due to lower fare box collections, which would be the cash collections, monthly pass sales, and also stored value sales. Moving on to the expense portion of the income statement, the total expenses for the month were $4.9 million below budget due to lower salary and wages, excuse me, and employee benefits. The employee benefits were lower due to about a $2 million credit charge related to the 2022 pension valuations. The amount PRT was required to pay in 2022 when the valuation came out was less than the actual expense that was paid in calendar 2022. So that's the $2 million credit adjustment. Our total expenses for the fiscal year continue to be well below budget by $39.1 million. Moving on to, in addition to the savings from the vacant positions, which I've mentioned at previous committee meetings, we also had reduced expenses in the work done by outside contractors line item. Diesel fuel is trending below budget. Other services and also general insurance are some of the line items with significant savings below budget. Subsidy for the month was about $436,000 below budget, and that's due to lower state operating assistance and vehicle overhaul invoicing. Our subsidy for the fiscal year is $4.7 million below budget due to lower state operating assistance and ARPA invoicing. However, specifically regarding ARPA invoicing, we just submitted over $27 million of ARPA invoices in the past week, so that should eliminate that variance going forward. Looking at a year-over-year perspective, March to March, the operating income for the fiscal year is $6.4 million higher than last fiscal year, so that's good news. And that is due to higher passenger revenues and also interest income. The passenger revenues, as I mentioned earlier, are over 12% higher than last fiscal year, which is a good sign. Interest income, due to the higher interest rates and also higher cash reserve position, is significantly higher than last fiscal year. Our expenses for this fiscal year versus last are currently $14.4 million above last fiscal year. About $9.1 million of that is higher expenses in the materials and supplies area. And that's due to higher diesel fuel, the materials line item expense, and also reconditioned unit expense. Our subsidies for the fiscal year or versus last fiscal year are $21.1 million higher. We budgeted higher state operating assistance, which the state has granted for this fiscal year. And we're also using more stimulus funding, at least through March, than we did last fiscal year. When you look at the operating reserves, we started the month with $169.2 million in operating reserves. We had cash outflows of approximately $47.7 million, and that went towards payroll, benefits, services, and materials and supplies, as well as access expense. We had cash inflows of $47.3 million. Some of the areas we'd received $18 million in state operating assistance during the month. We also received $10.4 million in federal stimulus, ARPA funding during the month. And we received $7 million from Allegheny County for county operating assistance during the month of March. So we ended the month with approximately $168.8 million in operating reserves. Can I answer any questions that the board may have?
Any questions from committee members? Any questions from other board members? Okay, hearing none, thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thanks.
That was our final agenda, our one and only agenda item. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
I'll
moved.
make that motion. And we will see you all in April. I'm sorry, May. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Smianik, and welcome to Performance Oversight Committee. Take a moment and just gather all your materials, and then we will begin. Thank you. Our first item of business this morning will be roll call. So I'm going to call out our two committee members. Lori Migorski, are you present?
Yes, I'm here.
Representative Nick Piscatano, are you present?
I'm here. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. And any other board members on the participating, please announce yourselves.
Jeff Letwin,
John Tagg.
And we're
Sorry, I have
Stephanie
a
Turman.
participant here this morning. Thank you, Stephanie.
Jennifer
Thank you. Thank you, Ally. Our second item of business then is approval of minutes of our March 16th Performance Oversight Committee. Does anyone have any changes, corrections for the March 16th meeting? Hearing none, could I have a motion to approve our March 16th minutes, please?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor to approve, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Very good. So moving on with our third item today, Mr. Tony Trona, you are very patient standing there with us this morning. So we are going to move forward with awarding of bids. So good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, committee members, board members. I have 4 items for your review and presentation to the full board for approval. All of our bids were publicly advertised and our e-business documents were distributed. The first is cleaning solvent service. 2 firms accepted our invitation and 2 bids were received for cleaning solvent service utilized in the maintenance of PRT's buses, rail, and non-revenue vehicle fleets. So our recommendation that the contract be awarded to the low bidder, Safety Clean Corporation, estimated amount $457,305.19 over a 3-year period. This price represents a 2% increase from our last contract 3 years ago. The second is transit advertising installation service. 3 firms accepted the invitation. 2 bids were received for the purchase of advertising installation service utilized at various PRT public facilities, fleet vehicles over a 4-year period. Our recommendation that the contract be awarded to the low bidder, which was Think Signs and Graphics LLC, estimated amount of $1,039,000. This price represents a 7% increase from the previous contract total 4 years ago. The other bidder was at $1.2 million, just to give you a sense of where the price point is for that. Number 3, Speed Swing. This is a CoStarz contract. Commonwealth of Pennsylvania Department of General Services has a purchasing program called CoStarz, and they awarded a maintenance, repair, and operation equipment and supply contract to H&K Equipment. And PRT wishes to make a purchase under the same terms and conditions as the state schedule. The contract is effective at least through March 28th of 2024, and we wish to purchase 1 Pettibone Speed Swing under the terms and conditions of the respective contract. This is a high rail crane type equipment utilized with various attachments by the way department in placing rail, setting ties, and cleaning paths through our LRV track system. This equipment will replace equipment that is at the end of life. So our recommendation that the contract be awarded under the same terms and conditions as the CoStarz contract to H&K Equipment, an estimated amount of $412,578. Number 4. Number 4 is a revenue contract, waste oil removal service. This service is the bid documents were distributed for waste oil removal service on a basis that the contractor would pay PRT based on the price per gallon and the actual gallons collected. And therefore, this solicitation was structured so that the award would be given to the highest bid. As such, 5 firms have submitted bids for these services for the PRT to utilize at the PRT facilities. So our recommendation that we award to the highest bidder, Enviro Service, Inc., estimated amount of $101,120 over a 2-year period. This price represents a $77,000 increase from the previous contract for this 2 years ago. The other bidder was at $50,000. The third bidder was at $33,000. Fourth bidder was at $32,000. So all of the bids were higher than previous. That concludes my report. Do you have any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Trona. Do any of our committee members have questions for Mr. Trona on these items? Do
Not
any
at
other
this
board
time.
members
Thank
have
you.
questions? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was saying not at this time. Thank you.
Very good. Any other board members have questions? Hearing none, could I have a motion to move this forward to the board next week?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Trona.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Moving on to item B, authorization to accept Pennsylvania Department of Transportation 2022 Act 44 Performance Report and approve 2023 Action Plan Improvement Strategies. Mr. Mike Setra, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Madam Committee Chairwoman. I'm good. And good morning to you and all the committee members and other board members. This first resolution that I have for the committee's consideration would authorize PRT's approval of PennDOT's 2022 Act 44 Performance Review Report for PRT and PRT's response of 2023 Action Plan Improvement Strategies document. Per Pennsylvania Act 44 of 2007, PennDOT established a performance review framework for Pennsylvania public transit agencies that receive state operating assistance that's focused on improving general management practices, business practices, and overall transit agency financial stability. Act 44 reviews are conducted approximately every 5 years. PennDOT conducted PRT's most recent Act 44 review. It was delayed a bit due to COVID, like so many things, in late 2021, and issued a final performance report in December of 2022. A copy of that report is attached as Exhibit A in the committee's packet this morning. And I'd highlight in particular the executive summary section. It provides, I guess it's an effective executive summary because it provides a very good overview of PRT's Act 44 review history, including that PRT was on track to meet its performance targets in 2020 prior to COVID-19, adversely impacting our ridership and revenues, and that PRT did meet its targets in 2021 with the exception of our cost per revenue hour needing to be further revisited and addressed in our next 5-year targets. The executive summary also does summarize those 2026 targets. Based on the results of that, and as required by PennDOT's Act 44 regulations, PRT worked with PennDOT to develop our action plan, which is essentially strategies grouped under those performance target types to try to ensure that we address and meet our performance targets over the next 5-year period. That action plan is attached as Exhibit B to members' packets this morning, and it focuses on strategies that we identified in cooperation with PennDOT that would target increasing passenger per revenue hour 3% annually over the next 5 years, increasing operating revenue per revenue hour 4% annually over the next 5 years, containing operating cost per revenue hour at a rate of 3% annually over the next 5 years, and then just some other general opportunities for additional opportunities to potentially increase revenue, improve efficiency, et cetera. Again, this is all detailed in the exhibits attached to your packets this morning. The Act 44 regulations do require that the agency's board both approve the performance report and our action plan. So subject to any member questions, I would respectfully request that the Performance Oversight Committee recommend this resolution that would do so to the full board for approval.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for the report and attaching all the amendments. Quite comprehensive document, so thank you. Do any of the committee members have questions for Mr. Setra on either the report or the response to the report? Do any other board members have questions for Mr. Trona?
My question, are there any financial impacts to this at all?
I would say that's a great question, Mr. Hague. Really, the financial impacts is we have to make sure that we are in compliance and showing a good faith effort to meet our targets as a condition of continuing to receive our state operating assistance. So that's really the main financial impact. And then also, one of the goals of the Act 44 review and action plan process is to try and help you improve your financial stability and cost effectiveness. So I would say the impacts are intended to be net positives for the agency.
Oh, thank you, Mike. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, JT. Any other questions for Mike Setra? Hearing no questions, could I have a motion to move this forward to the full board for approval?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? No. Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving along with Mike Setra for authorization to extend agreement to provide professional safety consulting and safety security management systems.
Yes, thank you, Madam Committee Chairwoman. This next and final resolution that I have for the committee's consideration this morning would authorize PRT to extend this agreement for the provision of safety consulting and security management services. In June of 2020, following our public procurement processes for obtaining professional services, the board authorized PRT to enter into an agreement with K&J Safety and Security Consulting Services, Inc. to provide these services for an initial term of 3 years at a total not to exceed amount of $860,000 with our standard option to extend the agreement at our sole discretion up to 2 additional years, at the agency's sole discretion up to 2 additional years. To date, K&J Safety has provided PRT with these services in a satisfactory manner. And if I could just highlight some of the key projects they've assisted us over the past 3-year period have included transitioning to our first agency safety plan under the new federal safety rules, which happened in 2020. We were, I'd like to highlight this when I have the opportunity, we were the first transit agency in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania to have our plan approved. So that was a really good effort, especially it was happening during the pandemic too. They also worked with us, as members will recall, the board did approve our annual required updates to the plan for 2022 earlier this year. That's something they work with us on, as well as our annual security plan reviews and updates. They've coordinated with us on multiple tabletop exercises, simulating both cybersecurity and physical security incidents, and then produce after action reports following those drills and exercises and simulations. And they've been working with our safety personnel to develop and roll out additional safety management system training across the agency, which is one of the requirements under the new safety plan, the federal safety plan and state and concurrent state adopted safety plan rules. Subject to any member questions, again, this resolution would authorize PRT to exercise its first option year to extend this agreement through June 30th, 2024. And we have sufficient funds from the originally authorized not to exceed amount for the option year if approved. So we are not seeking any additional funding. And if there aren't subject to any questions, I would respectfully request the committee move this resolution forward to the full board.
Very good. Excellent. Especially with no additional funds requested. That's always one of my personal favorites. So thank you, Mr. Setra. Any questions from the committee for Mr. Setra on this? Hearing none. Questions from other board members participating? Hearing none. Could I have a motion to move this forward for full board approval?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mr. Setra.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of our agenda this morning, the conclusion of our meeting. Could I have a motion to adjourn until next month?
Oh, come on.
So moved.
Second.
Very good. Thank you. We stand in adjournment. Up next will be our technology meeting. So thanks, everyone.
Hello, everyone. I'll give everyone a moment to get their materials ready for the technology committee. Okay, I'd like to I'd like to bring the technology committee meeting. I'd like to begin the session. First, we'll do a roll call. Member Ms. Gorski.
Good morning. I'm here.
And I'm here, and I believe that's the only two on the committee. Were other non-committee members, but board members identify themselves for the record, please.
Jeff Letwin.
John Tagg.
Anna Gorick.
Stephanie Terman.
Allie Doyle.
Michelle Smiana.
Okay, I believe we have everyone on the line and ready to go. So the first item of business is the approval of the March 16th Technology Committee minutes. May I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
And I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, we have a couple items of business today. First, I believe we have a bid. Who's up, please?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Committee members, board members, I have one item for your review and presentation to the full board for approval. The bid was publicly advertised and our e-business documents were distributed. 8 firms accepted the invitation. 8 bids were received for the purchase of road operations laptops and mounts over a 60-day period. So our recommendation, excuse me, so our recommendation the contract be awarded to the low bidder, which was IT Custom Solution, estimated amount of $106,721.75. There's been no purchase of these particular laptops currently, so the staff has determined that the prices were fair and reasonable. Just to give you an idea where the other bidders were on this, second bidder was at $137,000. Third bidder was at $169,000. Fourth bidder, $173,000. That concludes my report. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Trona. I do have one. How many laptops are we purchasing in mounts?
25 laptops and various mounts for the laptops, because they'll be mounting them in cars. They'll be mounting them in cars and so forth. Operation vehicles.
Okay. Thank you. And these are replacing existing laptops, I'm guessing.
That's correct.
Okay. I don't have any more questions. Any questions from committee members?
No questions.
Any questions from any other board members? No, hearing none. I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
And I will second. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Mr. Trona, for your presentation. The next we have a resolution which we brought forth by Mr. Devlin regarding our automated fare collection system. Mr. Devlin?
Yes, good morning. I'd like to thank Tony, procurement and legal, et cetera, everyone who helped get that road ops laptops bid completed. That was a big deal for us to get those upgraded. So we do appreciate all your assistance there. So the authorization I'd like to present this morning is for an amendment with our automated fare collection agreement with Scheid & Bachman. We have an agreement with Scheid & Bachman to repair our fare boxes. As I note on here, the equipment's now over 14 years old. It's nearing end of life, and we are working on our plans to replace it. But at this point in time, we are requiring more replacement parts that are unfortunately not covered under warranty as this stuff gets older and older. These fare boxes are installed on all of our vehicles and on our platforms on the rail side, so they're very heavily used in our legacy fare system. What we're requesting today is an increase of the contract by $500,000 so that we can continue some work in this current contract year that is outstanding and needs to be done. So the new total not to exceed on this contract would be $4,482,500. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take those. Otherwise, I'd request that this resolution be presented to the full board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Devlin. And I just want to clarify, so this is just for additional maintenance for the existing system?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Any board members have any questions?
Yes, I have a question. So how much longer do you think you'll be using these as we phase them out?
We're projecting 2 to 2.5 years.
Okay. So we're not paying 500,000 and only getting 6 months. Okay.
Oh,
So
no,
we'll be
no, we're, I'm sorry. Yes, you are correct. In fact, we're actually preparing the next extension year on this at this moment, and we'll be bringing that to the board in the next month or two to continue to maintain this equipment until we can replace it out. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
So there's no technology upgrades in this?
This is repair of existing equipment.
So we're not going to be upgrading anything?
Not at this time, no.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay. Any other questions from board members? No, hearing none. I will take a motion to approve,
So moved.
and I will second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. I believe that's all the business for today. Am I correct, Mr. Devlin?
You are correct. Thank you very much.
Okay, and I believe that's all the committee meetings for today, Mr. Setra, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, on behalf of the staff and the board members of the Pittsburgh Regional Transit, I'd like to thank everyone for their participation today. We stand adjourned for the committee meetings for today. Thank you very much, and everyone have a very nice weekend.
Thanks, everyone.
Motion to adjourn. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Thank you.